Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney, founder of the Positive Aging community. We're thrilled to have you join us for interactive discussions with pioneers and thought leaders on a wide variety of topics related to aging and longevity. These insightful discussions and the Positive Aging Sourcebook are brought to you thanks to the support from our Positive Aging community champions. Visit proaging.com to connect with them and discover hundreds of valuable other resources. We're excited to have you with us today, so let's jump into an engaging Positive Aging live and interactive discussion. All right, folks, I am super excited to have one of my favorite people in the whole world today, Sam Simon, who is affectionately known as Dementia Man in my world, has an amazing story to tell. And the beauty of it is that he is telling this story now in a brand new book that has just been launched. And I'm lucky enough to have a copy of the cover, which I am sharing here. But Sam, I've had many conversations with you, but I am just inspired by you and proud of what you've done for advocacy and caregivers. It's absolutely amazing, and I'm thrilled to be sharing some of the details that people will find when they buy your book today. So thanks for joining me.
So again, Steve, thank you very much for being such a fan. And just, yes, you knew my wife before you really knew me, because she worked in the senior living profession. She retired a while ago. And this is an exciting time for me. I'm called Dementia Man, just to make sure everybody knows, because I was diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's. And it's edging towards, I'm mildly cognitively impaired at the moment with Alzheimer's. It's getting a little bit more impaired slowly, but I can still write a book and carry a message. And thank you for helping me spread that message. And it's not just for the book, but I think the narrative, I think we both work at this, but the narrative, the idea, the book, because you get diagnosed with Alzheimer's and the historic reaction has been, oh no, it's so bad. And some people, I've heard it, I still hear it as I travel. My husband went into his room and didn't, or my wife was diagnosed, went into the room and never came out. And it's not, I don't want to be judgmental about that. It is a terminal diagnosis. People are real, and it is a diagnosis you get, a change in your life. It's a picture of the end, so to speak, a new trail that you're facing, that you're on. And it can be, I was there. It's in the book.
Well, let's back up real quick, because the thing that, so the Dementia Man book is just coming out. A play that you wrote and performed yourself is what preceded it. And I am telling you, this play, which is your personal journey of discovering, diagnosis, and living with purpose with dementia, is the subject of this play. And I recommend it to everyone. I've been to it 4 times. I could practically lip sync your script, but I still laugh and cry every time I see it. It is very thought-provoking. And why I'm thrilled that that's written the book is that I try to promote the play whenever, but you can only perform the play in so many places, whereas the book, anybody can order it in any part of the world and be inspired by your message. And so what I think we should do today is let's quickly walk through your journey because there's some things that really impacted me, and this journey is documented in the play and in the book. But what I'm sharing on the screen right now is the table of contents, and let's let's first start with a really quick background before we talk about the nothingness and your diagnosis. Let's do just a high level of pre-dementia and the accomplishments and the amazing life that you've lived. You're one of Ralph Nader's attorneys, and a self-proclaimed troublemaker. Tell a little bit about your life up to diagnosis, and then let's set the stage on how you your diagnosis
Well,
and
the most important thing in my life was when I was 16, I noticed this young lady. I was at a conference. Her name is Susan. And we were at this youth group conference and we sort of noticed each other googly eyed. And we were married 59 years, 3 months, and about 4 days. Who's counting now? And I talk, it sounds like a joke, but it's not because it becomes very important in my life. Other than putting up with me, yes, it's the stories in the book, but I was the only boy, four sisters, three older. What else was I going to do? Cause trouble? And I don't know. Sometimes I really seriously wonder if there's a genetic element that, because when I see, even as a kid, I talk about being 14 years old and going down to the city council and, got in the headlines of the local paper for objecting to the way they were enforcing their curfew then. And so when I go to law school, married, the only one we had let me see if I get it right. We didn't have a child, but one of the few married people still in law school, started in law school. College trouble in law school, but Ralph Nader, some people out there might not remember him, but his book was Unsafe at Any Speed in 65. In literally in 1969 into 70, he decided to start a public interest law firm. People didn't even know what those things were. And Ralph selected me. I don't know what it was, but me and three others, he could sense that piece that I don't know. You sort of emotionally exploded when you see and experience injustice. And I started with him back then. Had a little stint in the Army, caused them trouble. They tried to court martial me once because I got very angry about the way they were dealing with an issue, a personnel issue, and then went back to work for Ralph and made literally a career. I like to say sometimes, be careful who your first boss is. They may determine the rest of your life. And indeed, you're the second interview about the book. Ralph Nader this past weekend was the first person who
I
interviewed
love
me.
it, man. I love it.
And so I was, it made me, as my son now says, a minor celebrity at the time. But we advocated for major social change. Ralph Nader, it's rather than companies or corporations deciding what's good for people, the government should make sure what is offered to people is good for them. It's a subtle but major difference in perspective. And I worked by and large into the early 2000s from the 70s. So that's, let's see, 70s, 30, 35, 40 years in that field. Even after that, I started.
Sam, here's your reminder.
We need to mute for a second. Or maybe we'll leave that. One of my accommodations, I have Alexa remind me every morning.
And actually, I love that, Sam. I love that Alexa was reminding you, and that you're using technology as a tool
As an assistant
to enable you to be more productive. I love it. Well, let me. I really want to dive in to the diagnosis, and folks, in Sam's book, just you can tell. I mean, he is an advocate, nationally renowned advocate, worked on some amazing projects, but um, that sort of sets the table that, and in fact, I think you even say it in the play that your your most important. I think you joked about not being an athlete, that your brain is what was your main tool. And
Yeah.
with diagnosis, it's like, what, how am I going to live a life without my brain? And but
Well, can,
yeah,
can, can, just real quick on that. So what was starting to happen, and I was in my uh, mid 70s, early to mid 70s. In fact, I think it happened earlier than I even say in the book, because I think there was a moment in my late 60s that I was having a memory issue with my internist. And this is something everybody faces. Oh, Sam, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just you're an overeducated man overreacting to normal aging. And this started long, maybe much earlier. And my internist said, it's a different one, said, I know you, Sam. There's nothing wrong. And he sent me to a psychologist because they thought it was mild depression or anxiety because I was running a company back then. And every CEO, turns out every CEO gets anxious, and a lot of them were, he gave me medicine. So it wasn't until the symptoms become much more dramatic. I'm all of a sudden driving on the wrong side of the road and I catch myself. Then you hear, oh, don't worry, I've done that too. And then I began to have I try to do it in the play, I try to even do it in the book, to describe what it's like when all of a sudden, I mean, I could be even on this, I could have been on I'm sitting down trying to remember something, and all of a sudden, I'm not in the present anymore. All of a sudden, I'm this figure floating in deep space, surrounded by nothing, just infinity. And then I'm back. And
yeah.
at first, I dismissed it. And then it starts to scare me. And it was only when I was able to tell my internist that that was happening. Then he said, oh, well, you may be better see a neurologist.
And then
And
one thing that I like in the play, and you illustrate it very well in the book, is this uh, just 6 weeks. So like you saw multiple neurologists, but it's sort of like 6 weeks to get the appointment, 6 weeks to get the results. And then if you don't like the results, 6 weeks to find another neurology to get a second opinion.
yeah,
Um,
you're not quite right. You're not quite right because every once in a while it's 6 months, but
6
that's
months.
6 weeks, then
But
6 months, and 6 weeks, it's forever. Yeah.
but this really speaks to one of the advocacy goals of your book and the play is to reform the healthcare system to make navigating this easier for people because this is a very stressful time for folks. And you illustrate that I believe was it the first neurologist that you went to was sort of like hands you this news and you're like,
Walks
well,
out the
what do we
door.
do? And it's like, talk to the front desk, you know?
And then literally, I got the first neurologist says, "There's only one road for you, Sam. You're going to get worse now. I got patients. I got to leave. You
Yeah.
go to, and he gave me a prescription for Aricept, which is a common drug for Alzheimer's, but you have to start taking it and work up to it. I went to the front desk to check out. He said he'd left no instructions and will be in touch with you if he wants to see you again, which is malpractice. This particular neurologist no longer does memory work, by the way. It is so hard for people. And one of our big advocacy pieces, and I would love everyone in the world to hear it. My wife Susan had gone through breast cancer, and that was my first journey with a very alarming diagnosis. Back then, a long time ago, they were just beginning to have what was called breast navigators. Today, Medicare pays for breast navigators. Medicare needs to, we call it, and I'm going to own the term, cognitive navigators. We if there was somebody when we left the doctor's office, we could have sat down with, said, let me tell you a little bit about this disease. Here is a way you can do. What else do you need? How can we be of help? Now, there are some books and some things that help. And we have a new neurologist from that first one who now just once a month has a social worker. But it needs to be an integral part because this is some people have had Alzheimer's or neurocognitive disease in their family before. We didn't. And by the way, I have a genetic risk. We can talk about that later. But just the system, because you can live meaningfully and productively. The good neurologist said it could be 5 to 10 years before it gets a lot worse. Mm-hmm. So I can still be out there. I can still do things. And particularly if we begin to implement some disability access things for people with cognitive decline, just like we do for physical.
So when when somebody is in a wheelchair, we open the door, we have wheelchair ramps, we have buttons that they press, but invisible disabilities like schizophrenia, like dementia, ADHD, is having a support network and a support system that treats that the same way that we do broken bones and physical disabilities. That I think one of the coolest things in your play, like there's a cognitive navigator that needs to be in every neurology office, in every concert venue, and what have you. But then what I loved is how I got to see it firsthand in your play, The Dementia Man, where in the early days, you had actually hired somebody with playwright training who was your navigator in case something happened while you were on stage. And I think one of the coolest things is when you perform the play is how you hold your script and you refer to it. Um, and the cognitive navigator would remind you now Susan, your the love of your life and your spouse, he is a cognitive navigator for you. And I think most people who have loved ones with dementia, we are the cognitive navigators. So a person can have multiple cognitive navigators. But I love the term, and it's a great mission for your message.
And I want to add to that because it came up even in Susan's journey. When I was the care partner, well, I call it love partner. We give care. When Susan was sick, it's different. I mean, she doesn't have to give me shots or anything like that. But when she was sick, I had to do that. That's giving care. But then there is supporting and navigating and working around the world. So almost the equivalent for that is I can get lost. I can get confused. She's there to help direct me, to remind me. I still drive, but she's always in the car. It's once we're about to make the big leap and move into a senior care facility, and we'll be nearer to shopping and everything. Won't need to drive as much, and she can do the driving. It is a different experience than many other diseases. There are various kinds of it. I have Alzheimer's, there's frontal lobal, there's all sorts of kinds of neurocognitive disorders. We want to stop calling it dementia. All right, I know, I call my play Dementia Man, but I will change it. As soon as Congress passes a bill making the government, prohibiting the US government from using that phrase, just like we did in retarded, and I have a cognitive disorder. Because this is a demeaning word. So there's a lot in it. I'm lucky. People will hear us and say, oh, he doesn't have it. I guarantee I got it. But which is another deceptive thing about this disease. But the accommodation, what if there were a desk? We've seen it in some places. In Iowa, there's in Cedar Springs, there's an activity going on with the university and a senior living and the grocery stores. They have carts with, I have dementia. They have a desk not only this, but a separate line. So
Mhm.
trying to help me is not going to get everybody behind me waiting for me to figure it out and get angry, which happens, by the way. Um, but I can be there and folks can do it. And also, there is good medicine, also being in drug trials. There are a lot of things. We can live meaningful lives. That's what I want people to be able to believe, that you can live
Well,
a meaningful life.
yeah, and I think that one of the very uh, impactful elements in the play was that I thought you were taking literary license with is that contemplating going to Switzerland to end your life is and I said to you after the first time I watched the play, I was like, Sam, uh, that was really dramatic, but and I and you said no, that was real. And I've talked to hundreds of people who have received a diagnosis, and they talk about receiving that diagnosis as just being this black cloud over their head for an extended period of time. Is that you hear that you are going to lose your mind, and what is life going to be like without that? And uh, thankfully, you didn't uh, make that choice. But I think that it's what I've found is that when people come out of the cloud and how they get out from underneath that black cloud is reading your book, going to see your play, going to the walk to end Alzheimer's and meeting other people that are living with dementia, to bring them out of their cloud to live a purposeful life. And
There,
yes,
there is one thing right now that I'm a bit, it came up when it comes up a lot, and I want to say it again. Turns out it is the fact that one of the motives for people ending their lives is the cost associated with, particularly if you have to go into nursing or other things. And there was somebody had remembered, I known he lived in, um, he'd been a political consultant. Turns out I still have he's passed, but I still have in my phone all his contact information. I didn't realize that. And until I was reminded this month of his birthday. And I said, why did he remind him about he had passed? Hal Malchow. Hal Malchow had retired to Santa Fe. He was living there. He was diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's, my diagnosis. And in his obituary in the Washington Post, he was quoted as saying, I didn't want to continue to become this burden to my family because he didn't want all his resources. And I think about this, and I don't have a good answer to it. I do have one. The friggin' government needs to be sure that nobody is forced to take their life because they can't receive afford the care or lifestyle that is needed for a dignified end to life and process. And that's what he said. I didn't want to be this, continue to be a burden to my family. So he went to Switzerland and did accompanied suicide. And I'm a voice against that. I hope there are others in the world that, even with a cognitive disorder, even with so-called dementia, that we're entitled to dignity, and it shouldn't require us to go broke entirely. Everything we worked, not just me, but anybody who's spent a lifetime and been successful, um, you know, you have a home and all that stuff. You have a family you want to leave at least a little something to. All of a sudden, all of it's going to keep you for the last few years, to you for your last few years of your life. And
mhm.
that we need to change that. And there is huge dignity and there is a gift. So maybe there's a way to, I was faced with having to be with Susan as she took her last breath. And um, now our goals are changed. But there is a gift in that last moment, if you're allowed to do it, to be able to hold someone you love and tell them you love them as they're living. It's a gift to each of you.
Yep.
And then to go and there's even a little story, there's a risk of, I get agitated and I didn't realize every once in a while I swing my hands and I whacked her once and we talked to a social worker about that. We don't want to, she can't be in danger. Well, we have to be careful with that.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
think,
I think the important thing, the thing that I love is um that you and others are talking about this, okay? And because and and because and so it might be difficult for somebody to talk about it because like oftentimes I will say to people, it's like uh have you thought about what if you had a dementia diagnosis? No, I don't need to think about that. I eat right and exercise. That's not going to happen to me. And none of us have a crystal ball on what the journey in front of us is going to look like. But if you don't talk about it and have conversations, then that's when we that's when there can be more burden on our network around us. And so one of the things I like about having a conversation with you today is that you're sharing your whole story so people can reflect on here a man that was diagnosed and he's been able to live a purposeful life and he's thoughtful about what the next steps are in this diagnosis as well.
yes. And one last thing, maybe find out your own risk. There is a gift in the disease, if you want to say it, and that is I can be, I can help maybe find a cure. My journey. It's important to know and find out and for your own health. But I've been in drug trials. I'm out there, and when I tell people, well, there's a genetic test. See if you have a genetic risk. Oh, I don't want to know. Well, if you know and you get the risk, you can go into a drug trial. You can help find. There will be a cure to this disease, but they need people to be able to, and it's a win-win. You can start getting treatment and diagnosis and lifestyle changes early on, and that'll help you. And you have something to give to the science. And imagine that maybe your little thing, I always say this to people, maybe there's one tiny little thing about you that will help bring the cure even a nanosecond earlier, or a day earlier, maybe a year or two earlier. And you have that in you, and that's a gift for the rest of the world.
And selfishly, when we think about drug trials, is that you can't choose whether you're using a placebo or the actual drug, but you're contributing to potential breakthrough treatment. Um, you're getting access to that years before that will be available to the open market, which could benefit. It could improve your cognitive reserve or what have you.
And
Let me talk.
in many of these drug trials, you don't know during the trial, but at the end they put you on the drug for like
Yeah,
6 months.
exactly. So, so one thing that I want to talk about with diagnosis that you said something that sort of triggered me on this is that one thing that I've discovered is that when people get a health diagnosis, whether it be cancer, Parkinson's, dementia, you name it, you get this health diagnosis, and that black cloud is over your head. It's sort of like, what does this mean? Am I going to lose my independence? Am I going to be unable to do the things that I love, to communicate, what have you? You live with that black cloud for however long. It's grieving that life before is what that black cloud is. But the thing that I've discovered is that when you actively get out there, you are there's a whole community of people that might be better friends than you've ever had in your entire life because you share this diagnosis. I've seen this firsthand in the Parkinson's community where they've come together in such a meaningful way. And Sam, like I've read all about your background. Your only connection to this world of dementia and healthcare was because Susan worked in this field as its profession and you're her spouse. Now like you're literally front and center in it. You've connected with thousands of people that you would have never have met before, and we love hearing your message.
Yes, and one of the biggest challenges for those with diagnosis is isolation. And is widely active, and as I am, believe it or not, Susan and I are experiencing that. And that's why we're going to move into a senior living community, because there is a more of a community there. The house, we have been in the same house for 34 years. It's becoming too much of a burden anyway. But people, please, it's Alzheimer's Awareness Month. The book's coming out in Alzheimer's Awareness Month. Part of what I believe is awareness includes knowing that, being aware of those in your community with it, being aware that you can be part of their community, and reach out intentionally. One of the first times, so I've learned as I've gone through performances, one of the first time we were I performed in a senior living community, a couple walked up to us and said, my husband has Alzheimer's. We just moved in here. His old friends won't sit at our table anymore. They're nervous about it. So please, to anybody who hears it, reach out. It might be uncomfortable, but by and large, you'll learn too. How about that? There's something you too can learn. And the gifts of your presence is uncalculable. And maybe that's something it takes a little bit to learn. Your presence in the lives of people with going through these at almost any level. Whether if the person that who has it is now become someone else, which I talk about in the play, one day I won't be Sam, I'll still do it, and my wife will love it, and my children, and it is a gift that you have to give.
And we don't expect everybody to go out there and write a book and perform a play, but use Sam as inspiration to talk about it. Like it's oftentimes people will say, like what your friend said, I don't want to be a burden to the people around me, so I'm not going to share the fact that I've got this diagnosis. But I encourage people to talk about it, because when you start talking about it, you will realize that how many people are impacted by this disease, and you may find a new best friend that you never expected to find because of this horrible diagnosis. Somebody that understands you and understands what you're going through. Sam, I could literally talk to you for hours, and we've had a few sessions where we did talk for hours, but the purpose today is to celebrate the fact that your book is out. We want our community to support this book, share it, read it, and be inspired by it. Um, anything that you want to share on our discussion today, and we'll have several more folks that we didn't talk about that you really want people to walk away from this conversation with.
I think we've been pretty broad. I know it's run a little bit longer than you may want it. I hope people do it. And one last thing, finding if your life is touched, well, I want to do two things. If you have any history in your family, please find out if you have a genetic risk. And it can help you find the lifestyle that will help. Maybe you'll be I want to be the outlier, the one who lives the longest, maybe the only one who survives. That's my goal. Make it your goal, and in your family, be the outlier of the one who lives the longest. And you have gifts to give. And, I think that is almost the most important part. Never give up. And Life is Survivable. You can get the book, by the way, just on all the platforms, including Amazon, but any platform you usually get your book, it's either an ebook or a soft cover. And then I author, where it's struggling, but a listserv. You can go on my website and find out about it. To try
I'll
to
put
get in
all the
conversation.
links to
Yeah,
getting in touch, ordering the book, the listserv. I love your listserv, Sam. Uh,
it's,
Sam's thoughts and it's
but
great.
share too, so others can share, and you
Yeah,
can help find resources. Share the resources you know, um, because that in some ways finding those communities and mutual support and can be from anywhere in the country.
I love it. All right. Well, Sam, congrats and look forward to our next conversation. But this, as all of the conversations with you, has really been thought-provoking for me and inspiring, and I know it will to anybody else who's listening to this. So we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for your work.